These 4 sets of crappy old leaf springs are actually perfectly fine. I cleaned them up a few years back. But I guess since I'm in full restoration mode, I'll give them another freshen up. These tabs are a little bit annoying. There is a much better design where these clips consist of like a 3-sided shackle with a bolt across the top, so you can unbolt everything instead. I think you guys with long wheelbase Land Rovers have the bolted type. Anyway, you should get the corner of the clip red hot. But I'm doing it cold because I don't have any acetylene. And this is the second time these have been bent back cold. So I snapped a few of them. But that's not really a big deal. We'll fix them. These clips are not a high stress part of the spring. Now, you may have noticed that 2 of the springs look crusty, and 2 of the springs look gloopy. That's because, as a bit of an experiment, I put copper anti-seize in between the leaves of the front springs. And after a couple of years worth of everyday driving, it looks like it's still in there, still lubricating the springs and keeping rust away. I had a feeling copper ease would work well. It's designed to be very persistent. Now, we come to the crux of this operation. Getting the bushings out. There is a hard way to do this, involving a hacksaw, fire, and an axe. I mean a chisel, not an axe. I mean you'll end up hitting stuff with an axe in a frustrated rage-induced frenzy, but I don't know if you need it for bushing removal. I mean obviously Okay. I've done the hacksaw thing. If you got a day set aside for suffering, it works. But I recommend the easy way. Make yourself an extractor and installer tool. All you need is a piece of pipe, the thread from an old scissor jack, and some fairly large nuts. Of course, I only put these bushings in a couple of years back, so they're whipping out no problem. But this is the same tool I used to get most of the original bushings out. And they were stuck in the springs good and proper. And with the bushings removed, I sent all of the springs out for sandblasting, and they came back perfectly mint. And that was way back in 2019. Remember 2019? Fast forward to 2020. So they got a little rusty. At least they'll make a good thumbnail. I got sick of tripping over leaf springs, so I moved them out under the deck, where they developed a bright orange dusting of rust. I appreciate the irony in the fact that I paid a man to sandblast these, and now I'm wire brushing them anyway. But what you're seeing is only a very light coating, so the wire wheeling isn't too bad. It goes pretty quick. For tired old leaf springs like these, that's probably clean enough, but I am going to treat the last remaining specks of rust with phosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid is pretty rad stuff. It's an acid, so it removes rust in that acidic sense, but it also converts iron oxide to ferric phosphate, so any rust left behind is converted to a nice black stable compound. I say any rust, but of course only the top surface that it touches. Phosphoric acid is a little tricky to use. You don't want to completely wipe it off bone dry, or flush it off with water, because then you'll be exposing fresh etched steel to the atmosphere, and it'll flash rust in an instant. And if you just leave it to dry on the part, you'll end up with a gloopy mess, a bit like dry PVA glue. What I do is wipe it off while it's still wet, but kind of like you wipe down your kitchen bench with a slightly damp cloth. I'm leaving a thin film behind. Because that thin film left behind is phosphoric acid's third magic trick. It will convert the steel into this nice grey colour and protect the steel surface for quite a while. I'm talking if it's stored indoors and dry, like a car body that you've stripped and need to keep flash rust off while you work on it. So anyway, I didn't have enough acid in stock to finish the job, and the overnight courier replenishing my stock has so far taken 5 days. But I did manage to get one full set treated, so that's what we'll be running with for the rest of the video. This is the front left set. It's probably the worst. Both front springs are heavily pitted. Not from me leaving them outside, just from the first 40 years of their life. I should mention that I'm probably not going to put these springs on my Land Rover. I think new springs are likely. But I'm cleaning these up anyway, because that's better than constantly tripping over a pile of rusty metal. And honestly, these springs will function like new. The pitting and wear just means that you're one step closer to snapping a leaf. But that might never happen. So we'll see. When you're cleaning up leaf springs, most of the job is just about removing the crusty rust fusing the leaves together. But you also want to look out for wear areas like this. I appreciate that this leaf is particularly crusty, but anyway. You can see a wear area where the spring normally sits. This is where it jiggles around as you rumble along. The leading edge of the leaf below digs a bit of a trench. Now, if you imagine when you go over a more significant bump, the leaf has to move further, which means that it has to climb out of its cozy hole, bashing up and over the ridge it's made for itself. So instead of a nice smooth riding transition, you smash your elbows against the door frame. But it's easy to smooth out any worn areas with something like a flap disc. I wouldn't go overboard with this because you are removing material from the spring. And this one isn't bad, so I'm not going to touch it. Also, you can chamfer the leading edge of each leaf. Anything to ease the movement of leaves rubbing against each other is going to help your elbows. So, I've got a number of broken tabs. I'll fix those shortly. But first, on this particular leaf, I managed to pull one of the tab things right out, busting the rivet. An easy fix. It's actually quite nice. I don't often get to use my anvil. That's some professional blacksmithing right there. And paint. I'm going to seal each leaf with a light coat of paint. There's no point going over the top with this. these springs will chew the paint up in no time. But you have to put something on old springs like this. When springs are new, sometimes they are painted, but otherwise the metal has a good hard scale on it from heat treating. Without paint, these old springs would be bright orange within a week. Next, installing new bushings. I make this look as hard as possible. I don't know, I enjoy the rage. You see, I have to start pushing it in with a clamp because the leaf and bushing together are just a little bit too wide for my vise. And if you're wondering what happened to my extractor installer tool, which would have made this job a breeze, well, it died an honourable death, ending up looking suspiciously like a crowbar. Okay, let's put this odd looking tree together. Really? Tree? I decided I am going to run with the copper anti-seize. And I'm sure that a few of you have something to say about that. So come on, don't be shy, let's hear it. That's what the comment section is for. Now, wherever the tabs survive, it's just a case of bashing them back over. The broken tabs need welding back on. I think it goes without saying that you probably don't want to weld on the spring steel itself. But, you know, if you're stuck way out in the bush with a broken leaf, and all you have is a power supply and welding gear, who's to say you can't overcome metallurgy and make it home? And that's it. The only thing left to do is overcoat the whole spring with a couple of coats of paint.